Good morning, everybody. We'd like to now call the meeting of the CAC to order for January 2023. Even got the date right. So, let's see. We need to have the roll call.
Velma will do the roll call. Thank you.
Richard Farias, Lawson Picasso, Diana Martinez, Frank Gonzalez, Cliff Soloway, Raquel Zapata, Alavita Cantu, John Kelly, Tom Corser, here. Vanessa Alvarado, Bill Day, Mary Dennis, here. Steve Bonnet, here. Audra Crapsaddle, and Bob Zapata.
Okay, we're going to get started with the invocation. Apologize for the echo. We are thankful for this day, for its blessings, its opportunities and challenges. We are grateful for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing important responsibilities. We ask that our thoughts and our actions are productively guided so that we have a successful meeting of the CPS Energy Citizens Advisory Committee. Help us to accomplish our goals while displaying character. Help us to do good, to be honest, to serve others, and to fulfill our obligations to our community. Amen. And if you will all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. So I'll turn it back over to Yvonne now for our staff update.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Julie and team. And Chair Kelly, good to have you as chairing for the committee this year, so welcome. And Happy New Year to all of you. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season and that your 2023 is off to a good start. We have as far as staff update and upcoming events, I do want to mention that our executive team is going to be before City Council tomorrow at 1 o'clock to give City Council a briefing on our generation planning recommendations. So the recommendations that were given to our Board of Trustees last month there will be a briefing before City Council tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And then our board will take a vote on those recommendations next week on the 23rd. So I encourage you all to participate, by listening in to that live stream or recording of the council meeting tomorrow or the board meeting that's next week, again on the 23rd. We also have another council appearance coming up on January the 26th. This is in regards to the Scenic Loop Transmission Line Project. So for those of you that were part of the CAC last January, you received a briefing on this, the transmission line project that we're doing in the Scenic Loop area. It's just outside of the city limits. So we'll be going before City Council to request condemnation authority to execute on that project in the event it is needed. Again, that is in the event it is needed, but we are committed to negotiating with all landowners in the path of that transmission line in good faith. But that is a standard protocol to go through to request that authority in case it's needed. That transmission line project has also been approved by the Public Utilities Commission of Texas. And several public hearings were held as part of the project before it went to the PUC for a vote. So again, we're going before council on the 26th for that. Also, the legislative session, as you well know, has started. And one of the traditions that's been had in the past is that the Citizens Advisory Committee has planned a day at the Texas Capitol. And so the local government relations team and our partners with federal and state, we are going to be, we're on our very early stages of beginning to make a plan for that. So I wanted to make you aware that, we're going to target the month of March. It would be an all-day event to take whoever is available, to the Capitol to observe, legislative hearings, and committees that will be in progress. Again, we're in the very beginning stages of this. So as we, get some traction on that internally, we will reach out to you all and provide you with some updates. We will most likely have to poll the group to gauge the best dates of availability to go out there so we can totally optimize the occasion. So just want to plant the seed now that this is something that we're working on, and we will keep you apprised as, more details become available and, and again, so that you guys can plan accordingly. Tom, did you have a question? No? I'm not sure. There is not yet a date. Yeah. What I'm hoping to do is, with my team's help, what I'm hoping to do is be able to see some sort of a legislative calendar so that we can see what topics are going to be covered so that we can, select, give you all some dates to choose from that would be optimal. All right. And then at the bottom of your agenda, just want to point out a couple of things as far as dates. Again, I've already mentioned that our next Board of Trustees special meeting is on the 23rd, and that's to take the vote on the generation planning recommendations that have been put forth for them. There is a Municipal Utilities Committee meeting scheduled for the 24th. The majority of that agenda, though, will be covered by SAWS. On the 30th of January is the Board of Trustees regular board meeting. And our budget will be before the board on that date. And also, Kathy Garcia, who's our VP of Government Affairs, as well as Carrie Meyer, they will be presenting to the board on the legislative agenda. So you guys are getting a really good preview there of what's going to be presented to the board on the 30th. And your next meeting will be on February the 8th. And again, my goal is between now and then to be able to provide you more details relative to the CAC day at the Capitol. All right. I will do a very brief safety message this morning. And this safety message is the right attitude towards safety. It's important to take safety seriously in order to avoid accidents that can cause fires, job-related injuries, hazardous substances that can lead to serious illness, and comply with OSHA safety and health regulations and also work rules and policies and procedures. Carelessness is the most common cause of workplace accidents. Unsafe acts are often a factor in accidents. They result when people take attitudes like these towards safety: complacency, being upset or angry, fatigue, recklessness, or being afraid to ask questions. So take a positive attitude towards safety. Take personal responsibility for your own safety and that of your coworkers. Pay attention to training. Follow every step and every job and every time. Know and follow safety rules. Wear your personal protective equipment. Give your work your full attention. Keep your eye out for hazards. Put your personal feelings and problems aside while you're working. Urge your coworkers to follow safety procedures. Know what to do in an emergency, and ask questions about a procedure or precaution that's unclear. The right safety attitude prevents accidents, injuries, and illnesses. Thank you. All right, so Chair Kelly, it's time to ask the committee to approve the minutes from the December meeting.
Okay, thanks. We have before us, we have a recap of the minutes, and at this time, I would like to ask for approval of the minutes. If somebody would like to discuss that.
I make a motion to approve the minutes. I'll second it.
Thank you. All right. Has anybody got any comments on the minutes? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for doing that. And I'll make a few comments. We have a really robust agenda today. The two topics that we're going to be listening to are really both going to be very important topics. They're very interesting, and so I won't take a bunch of time here, but I do want to make a couple of comments. I want to thank Bill Day for his excellent chairing of our committee last year. He did such a great job, very professional, very smooth and polished, and y'all will understand that. After you put up with me for a year, you'll understand how great he did. So anyway, appreciate it, Bill. You know, there's probably not many of you in here that are old enough to remember President Kennedy, but one of my favorite comments of his was from his inaugural address, where he said the torch is passed to a new generation of leaders. I'm going to flip that on its head, and I'm going to say this time the torch is passed to an old generation of leaders, since I'm a lot older than Bill, but we'll try to keep it interesting this year. And I guess as judges, I saw an interview with our new county judge, Sakai, in the paper this morning, and he said things were a little bit rough at first, but after a while it kind of smoothed out once he got himself kind of situated. So hopefully that'll happen to me. It may be a little rough today, but we'll try to get things smoothed out in the future. But again, Bill, thanks for your year of chairing the group. I'd also like to welcome Diana, and I don't know if Dr. Cantu has joined us yet, but I'd like to welcome both of them to our leadership group for the committee, and look forward to working with you, Diana, and with Dr. Cantu as we move forward this coming year. Finally, I'll just say that in my management style, I always like to emphasize collegiality and a group effort. I always, when I was managing different things, TxDOT and so forth, I always told everybody in the management group that you know, the leader doesn't have all the answers, that's for sure, and that's surely the case here. So I want to encourage everybody to speak up and offer suggestions for topics to be heard and discussed, and to reach out to the staff, and the staff is excellent, so I'm sure they'll help us with what we would like to know. And so I encourage everybody to speak up. Now, Tom, that doesn't apply to you, because I know you're going to speak up anyway without any encouragement. I'm just kidding, Tom. We're happy that you have good participation. So I think with that, we'll just move forward. Yvonne, let's go ahead and start with our first presentation.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. And as you've noticed, I'm using this cellular device as a microphone. So if anyone has any questions, you know, during the presentation or after, if you'll be patient with us, raise your hand, let us come to you so that you can use the phone as your microphone, so that the folks that are on WebEx can hear you, okay? You know, we do, because of space, you know, the only folks that are in the room today, of course, are the committee and the presenters. We have several staff members, as well as a few other committee members that are joining via WebEx. It'll be important for them to hear. And you never know, there may be some staff members that are online that would have some additional context to offer. So, you know, without further ado, I know you all are looking forward to this presentation, ERCOT market briefing. You know, ERCOT and the changes and proposed changes to the market have been making lots of headlines over the past, I'm going to say, a couple of months. This has been going on. So you get an excellent opportunity to get a briefing, you know, from our subject matter expert on this topic, Mr. David Key, Director of Energy Market Policy. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to test my clicker, make sure it works. It looks like it works. So my name is David Key. I'm the Director of Energy Market Policy, and I think I presented the CAC before, but there's some new members here. So my job is to basically monitor and track and engage at the PUC and at ERCOT, focus on energy markets primarily, but anything regulatory that goes through those bodies, I'll be working to help kind of give the CPS Energy view, engagement, lead that effort. So today I'm going to focus on market design. It's a big topic. It's been very contentious, to say the least. It's been a long time coming, we think, and so I'm going to give you some insights into what the regulators are looking at, what the state is looking at, and how we are responding internally. Normally, I've been titling all my presentations as energy transition or things like that, because we are seeing a big transition in the industry. But for this, I'm just going to focus on market redesign. Talk about background, talk about the PUC, some efforts and timelines in our interaction. So basically, at a very high level, wholesale markets are the key here. And so when we think about how ERCOT and the PUC and the state provide reliability to its customers and its citizens, it uses the electric market. We are seeing transformation in the energy mix. I'll have some slides here in a couple of seconds to illustrate that. But we've been really using the markets as a primary mechanism for creating that incentive to make generation investments. We're starting to see changes in those investment drivers. As listed here, there's things like subsidies, fuel supply, environmental impacts, and just overall market risks that are really driving investment trends. It is important to note that now that we're in a legislative session, the state leadership is very much focusing on markets and reliability. And so they're making a shift from affordability, which used to be the main goal, use markets to drive efficiency and create more value for customers. Now they're looking at reliability. Winter Storm Uri was I think the driving force behind that. And they said, we might need to spend a little bit more to get a little bit more reliable. And so we're going through that discussion right now. Overarching bottom line is, as the grid evolves, the market's going to have to evolve, and we're going to be working through that. This is a view of the changing resource mix, and this data really shows the projects that are looking to come to ERCOT. This is a little bit older data, but it still illustrates the trends. You see in the purple bar here, there's a lot of solar in the future that's going to be developed. That's really the lion's share of everything that's going to be developed. The blue bar is our existing capacity, and the overall measure shows how much extra we have in the market to basically provide for our customers. So we're eating into our existing capacity as our loads grow, as our customers grow. As people move to Texas, we've heard 1,000 people a day, I think is the number. So there's lots of people coming to Texas, and we're starting to use up that capacity that we're using. All the generation is being used. And the new stuff looks like it's going to be a lot of solar. So that's one item to keep in mind. This view shows the vintage of generation. I don't know if this has a laser, but I can come up here and point to it. This blue color here shows older aging gas. We have some coal here in the 70s. So 70s and 80s vintage generation is probably going to start retiring pretty soon. And we've seen a recent increase in wind and solar investment recently. So as gas and coal generation, rolls off, we're replacing it with renewables. And so that works as long as we maintain a balance across everything. As we can see here, there isn't a whole lot of balance in the recent trend. And so that plus our existing, that plus this causing concern at the state level, and they're trying to figure out how to address it. So market design is the top priority, like I mentioned earlier. The commission, the PUC, has overarching authority over the markets, and they basically say, or they'll go through a process to determine how they want to improve it, how they want to change it. They can make giant changes, they can make small incremental changes. Their direction is to take larger changes. I wouldn't say a giant change to redesign the whole market, but they do want to create a very large change. And they want to use something that's, you're never going to see the legislature or anybody admitting to it, but they're really trying to figure out a way to create a capacity market. And so that has a lot of baggage with it at the legislature. People don't like that word. They think it's creating too much cost. They say capacity markets fail. We love our energy only market. But in the second bullet, there's a list here of ideas that are basically capacity market ideas that are using different names to describe them. Questions? It looks like we got some. And you say the question, I'll just repeat it so we don't have to walk back and forth. Right, so the question is, this addresses installed capacity, it doesn't address transmission and being able to transmit power. So that's correct. All of these efforts are focused on creating an incentive to get the generation that leaders of this state want. And I'll say it that way because depending on who you ask, people want different things. And so we're saying leaders of this state want more dispatchable generation. Is there another question?
What is dispatchable generation?
Good question. So what is dispatchable generation? that's defined very loosely as something that has an on-off switch and a fuel supply that's just constant. So a natural gas, you can turn it on, you have fuel supply, it runs as much as you need it. A solar plant is not dispatchable because you have to wait for the sun to come up for it to turn on, and it doesn't follow load as easily as it is. One nuance is if you can put enough of a battery next to a solar plant, you can store it up and you can move it around. So that's kind of where it's headed, but that's the idea there. Yes. Okay. So going back to prior slides, it says, looks like this isn't working very well. Right. So, right. That's all ERCOT. These are all ERCOT data. So all the prior slides are showing data related to ERCOT. These are information from either ERCOT or from agencies that monitor ERCOT. So we're talking about investment and we're talking about vintage of generators. That's all ERCOT-wide and investment trends. We're talking about installed capacity. That's all ERCOT-wide. So this is all relative to ERCOT. So when I say we, CPS Energy as a participant in the ERCOT market, that's where I'm thinking of. So that prior slide was right. Go back here, okay? Correct. So this is a historical view. What do you think that is? And really my question is, CPS role for kind of portion of that, right? Because we went through that generation. Right. Everybody else. Great question, and it helps me tie the two together. So this is a historic look. This is investment per year, and then this is the look going forward. So you see you have future years. This is the expected investment. Now I don't have an indication of where CPS is in here because we haven't finalized specific projects, and this is relative to specific projects. So out in the queue somewhere, there's however many megawatts that it equates to, because this is a percentage of solar, and very small new thermal and very small new wind. But guaranteed we're going to be in here as we come up with new projects, sign agreements, and create new projects that we're going to be investing in. Those will go into this queue and will be part of this number. But that's a good question. We can follow up. So the question is, are we calibrated to this investment trend? And I don't have a good answer for that. We can follow up with that. And that might be part of the generation planning discussion that Benny's leading. Right. Good question is, are we leading the curve or are we just following suit? So we'll make sure to get that as follow-up. Yes. Hello. Right. Okay.
Is there
Okay, so that's a very long question. I'm going to try and summarize it. Right. So I'm hearing, we're going to see a lot of retirements. What's exactly going to happen to that capacity? What's our involvement in that? And at the very high level, we'll have to get some deeper discussion on this, but at a very high level, ERCOT doesn't own any power plants. Those are all owned by investors, all owned by utilities. So it's up to each utility to figure out how it wants to handle its equipment. Does it want to auction it off and sell it for scrap, or what does it want to do? And we could follow up as to what our plans are. I don't have that information available as part of my purview, but I think that can be something we can follow up on is, what do we do with our power plants? And that's probably something that's worth discussion. Sure. Yes.
Totally hold you up here, but quick question. I was
Right. So the balance here, the question is, why does this look so slanted towards solar and wind? And remember, this is a view of expected capacity. So these are the projects that are being added. So looking forward, when you look at all the projects that want to come into ERCOT, most of them are going to be new solar. You are going to have some new wind, but the majority is going to be new solar. There's a little bit of squishiness in this number because some of these are developers looking for a spot. So they have the same project in a couple of different places because they see maybe 2 or 3 places they can interconnect. So that's why the 2022 number is so much lower than, you know, the future numbers. But we do see a higher investment driver for solar for whatever reason. I think a lot of folks are seeing that you'll get better market prices during the day, during the peak, which solar lines up more equally better. But this is the way that the numbers are showing up. All right. Okay. Right. So this is using the reserve margin and showing which share of that comes from which type of resource. So going forward, our reserves are going to be mostly more new solar and new wind and less of our existing capacity. So that's how to read it. That's a good point. So every percentage on here shows the percentage of reserve margin. And so we have a expected 2022 reserve margin of 23.9%. And so you can see the different pieces that make that up. Right. Right. So you can assume that 0 here is what we need, and all the stuff, extra stuff is the extra stuff for generators tripping online or offline and turning off or having issues. So this is all the extra we're going to be getting.
So therefore, that 38% actually above the 41.
Right. So the statement in the room is that the baseline's going up, and that's reflected in you see everything kind of shrinking as far as existing. We're not necessarily seeing a bunch of retirements. We're just seeing growth in demand, which is eating into our existing capacity. So that's a good observation. So I'm going to keep moving, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the second bullet that has these sub-bullets under it. There's 5 different flavors of a capacity market. I won't go into the definitions of each of them, but I will say the current favorite seems to be this PCM or performance credit mechanism. And this, at a very, very high level, is a way to say, go through the year, and if you look back, do a backcast and see where the highest risk hours were in the year. I think right now the number is estimated at 30. Let's just pick 30 hours of the year and see where the grid was the most stressed. And anybody that performed during that time, during those periods, you get a bonus payment because you were there for the grid. And this is a way of basically saying, well, I want to be there, so I'm going to make investments. I'm going to have more generation. This is a way to spur capacity. And so there's a lot of nuance there that I won't get into, but that's really at a high level what they're looking at. Before, I would say all of these had less than equal, relationships to each other, where the LSC was the favored and the PCM was the next. We've seen a lot of mixed reviews. We did see a letter from the governor this week saying he likes the PCM, so that's going to carry some weight. We've heard from senators say, we don't like any of this. So there's a lot of tension there. So none of this is really solved yet or resolved. But just so you know that there's an ongoing discussion that's happening. And there's even companies like Shell that are trying to create coalitions to say, let's not do a capacity market, let's do more operational changes, create new ancillary service, which is basically, a reliability service that generators will get paid for. You give them a revenue stream, ERCOT gets more reliability. So there's other things that are happening and nothing's really decided yet. So. Right. The question is, this is about investment, and that's the overarching goal, is to create investment.
is Shell one particular company that's proposing this, or other?
Right. So Shell is leading a smaller coalition of market participants. So you'd say people that are in ERCOT. We've been talking with them. We're not well aligned with them. We are keeping up. We understand what they're trying to do. But they do have people that support it. So they have power marketing companies, other generator investors that support this. Not overarching, it's not everybody, but they do have some support. But there's also support for all the different ones. And I think the PCM got support from a larger group of generator investors and generator owners to say, if you do this, we'll make more generation. So there's competing interests out there, and there's no real clear winner yet. Right. Okay. I want to say, let me skip ahead because I think that's important. Right, so the question is, where do we align? So let's skip to the end, we can go back. So where do we align? And that's with everybody. I will say that we do have it's not just me working on this, we have a group, a Tiger team, but basically folks from all over that are looking at these things. And we're looking at, these are our questions that we're looking at. What's the reliability need? How do we justify the cost? You know, what are we really trying to do here? We think we align well with pretty much everything that's been proposed. We can manage, given our current, investment strategies, and our portfolio of generation, is big enough to cover our demand, our load. So we think anything will work. We're trying to see what we can do that's the best. So that's not a great question. That's not a great answer to your question. Where do we align? But we're not a generator solely, so we don't align with the generators. We're not a consumer solely. We don't align with the consumers. We really want what's going to make sense for the grid. And I think we're starting to agree that if you look at the way that the grid is going, there's going to be a lot of retirements coming up, including a lot of our generators. And so we need to make sure that the market can support that. We need to make sure the grid can support that. Maybe it's in the short term having more investment in natural gas and working through with technology to figure out how to make the transition to more renewables. And so we're trying to work through all that, and we don't have a very good answer other than to say we're trying to do what we think is best for the market, that also lets our portfolio move in the direction we want to move. Right. Yeah, I think there's general agreement between all the larger generators that own companies that serve customers. So the PUC likes to call them gen-tailers, but it's a generator retailer. So someone that actually owns a power plant and then has a bunch of customers. You're supposed to have those separate, but the way that the way the companies are set up, you can have them in the same company, and they really want to be able to do the same thing we want to do. So I think we're starting to see that we can align with those companies. We just haven't gone that far to say that publicly yet. So I don't really want to commit to being able to line up with those guys, but we seem to be along the same lines as large portfolios with big generation and a lot of customers. We need to make sure that the grid's going to support our customers. Yes. Right. So we don't fully align. So the question is, I said we don't align with the generators. Now I'm thinking we don't fully align with the generators. If you go up to a generator owner and all they do is own generation, they're going to want to build power plants. And that's all they're going to want to do. So they're going to want more money so that they can basically make their financing. I think in one of my other slides, I have a bullet that says, let me find it here, sorry. Right at the bottom, it's investors want long-term certainty. So you want to be able to have a program that's going to give me revenues constantly so I can make sure I can make my debt payments because my generator is going to cost me cost me money for 20 years. And energy only gives you, this year at most. And you can do forecasts, but you don't have that long-term guarantee. And so the commission is trying to figure out ways to do that. And we may not agree that we need, that 20-year payment to service debt, especially if it's for a generator that in another portfolio that we don't really, support. Right. Yes and no. So we're starting to see some divergence. There's some different opinions and differing investment strategies. And so I think on the whole, we all believe in the market. We want the market to work. I would say that, Garland probably has a different generator strategy than Austin does, and as do we. We're all a little bit different. We used to be very well aligned, but I think as our cities grow and move in the direction that they want to move, we're all starting to see a little bit differences here and there. So we do our best to stay aligned with folks as we can, but when we need to separate and kind of lead the way, we will do that. Yes. Good question. So what's the relationship between ERCOT and the PUC? So the PUC is the regulator and ERCOT is the operator. So the PUC will basically say, here's your policy. They'll work with stakeholders through a legal process to basically say, here's what I want to do. Here's some rule changes. Stakeholders go in, they provide feedback, they even offer edits. It's up to the commission to vote on the policy. They approve it. That gets handed down to ERCOT. ERCOT will implement the policy. At this phase, since we haven't approved any policies yet, ERCOT is providing technical feedback. So they're saying we can do a change. This will take this many years and this many dollars. ERCOT is they have a very large project plan going forward. They have a lot of changes that they want to make and they need to make in order to keep up with technology. So how does this fit into that mix? So that's the relationship there. Is ERCOT is very technical in implementation, whereas the PUC is policy focused and they will basically set the policy. The only one that really influences the PUC lately has been the legislature and the governor's office. So it's gotten elevated to a higher level of political influence and cooperation and discussion. And we'll probably hear Carrie talk about that a little bit more, but that's where that's how that relationship works. So another question?
I'd like to know, who are these? Where do they come from? What is their for us as a people? So who they are and how they
Right. So not a problem. So I'll repeat it for the folks on the phone. But the question is, who are the commissioners? What are their drivers? I think it's a good follow-up discussion that we could probably do it as a deep dive, or maybe provide like a one-pager to give you a little bit of insight on that. That's totally doable. At the very high level, the two-sentence answer is they're appointed by the governor right now. They used to be appointed by the governor, and now there's a committee for the commissioners. That's ERCOT. You're right. So they're appointed by the governor. ERCOT board is appointed by a committee. So the PUC is appointed by the governor, and they basically serve at that defined terms that they come from the governor's office, or people that have worked their way up, and the governor believes that they can do the job. Right. For folks on the phone, Carrie was helping us providing that. They have to have experience, or two of them have to have experience in the utility industry or some kind of knowledge of it, but then the other ones are just serving based on whoever the governor selects. So I'll just kind of push through it, and just the other key point I wanted to make here is this is more of a look at how capacity works and how revenues work. We talk about energy only market. We've heard a lot of that. That's that first bubble. We live all there right now. We don't have a whole lot of capacity payments right now. Ancillary services kind of fall in that bucket because it's not energy. But either way, you take those two and you add them up and you come up with the total revenue that the generator will make. And the PUC is trying to figure out ways to increase that total revenue so they can get investment. So they're looking at pumping more money into the capacity side, which is why you'll hear about capacity markets. They've limited themselves on the energy only side by reducing the energy, the price cap. So the prices can't go very high. I mean, $5,000 is a lot of money, but if you think about how much gas can go, it really turns out to be not as much as you think. But either way, this is what the commission is looking at as they're making decisions.
By that, goes back to what I was trying to say. There will leave the market increase in revenue.
Right.
If revenue comes
Exactly. And so you will notice in that last one, it says total market revenue / costs, because consumers pay those revenues. And so it's a great point. And we're very well, we're very sensitive to that. We do provide that feedback to the commission every chance we get. I will say that we don't know what's going to happen with the commission. That's basically the bottom line here. The commission seemed like they wanted to make some changes and get going. They've gotten a lot of pushback from legislators, and so that's going to be something that we'll see probably this session. Very much expecting to see the session and legislators tell us more information, give us more direction. And then, so, finishing up, these are our discussion topics. These are things that are very near and dear to CPS Energy. We're trying to figure out the right way to message on this. We are lining up with, we do need to see more changes to create more investment. It's just a matter of what does that exactly look like. At this point, everything is at the 50,000 foot level. Once we start seeing more specific proposals, we will start providing a lot more feedback, I think, to say this will work or this doesn't work. But everything is so kind of squishy right now. It's really hard to get into the very specifics and say this is good or this is bad. So let me see if I have any other slides, and we'll continue to take questions if we have time.
So
Sure.
I thought so go up to a very high level. What
Okay, so the question is, okay, absolutely. So question is, there's confusion on the relationship between ERCOT and CPS, or probably the PUC and this whole market thing. So I'll talk a little bit about how we work in the market and why all this is important. So at the very highest level, like I said before, ERCOT doesn't own anything. They're the air traffic control. That's how they've always described themselves. And we're Southwest, well, maybe not Southwest. We're American Airlines. We're whoever you like to go with. That has a functioning system, although that's probably a good plug for our ERP system. We don't want to be Southwest. But so we were the airlines. We own all the planes, so we need to buy planes to go through the airlines so they can make sure all of our customers can get where they need to go. Same thing. ERCOT doesn't own anything. PUC doesn't own anything. They just regulate. They need to figure out a way to spur investment. And so as we make investment decisions to either we're going to buy power for everybody to give to our customers, or we're going to make it ourselves. That's the bottom line. What's the best way to do that? So we have to understand what the market's going to look like so that when Benny and his team get together and say, how do I create a plan that works? Then we make sure that we're making the best use of our dollars in our investment decisions. We could try. It'd probably be very expensive, right? I mean, if we're going to say we're going to do all of our own power generation, we'll have to basically come up with a lot of stuff. And right, ERCOT is the market that we all participate in the state of Texas, and that's just the way it works. And we buy and we sell there, and ERCOT does provide a lot of value. I mean, there's times when we can buy power cheaper than we can make it, and then as power prices go up, we can make it cheaper than we can buy it. So it's a good process. Right. Right. That's right. So if Rudy and our board and everybody agrees we want to go out and do X, we need to make sure that the market can support whatever we want to do. And looking at the decisions that we're making and the direction we're going, I think we're very well positioning ourselves the way that the market's going. We're going to have a balanced portfolio. We're not going to have too much in one bucket, everything's going to be able to work through it. So, my personal opinion is I think we're heading in the right direction. Yes.
Question about telephone, question about power line, especially
Transmission, yeah. Right. There's an effort. So the question is, how is the state, what are the incentives, what is the direction of transmission investment? I will say that the regulators, PUC, as well as ERCOT, who's a technical implementer, they're moving in the direction to make transmission investment easier. They've lowered hurdles that you need to create or you need to pass to justify projects based on cost. If you have a reliability project, you just go out and build it. I mean, you're going to need to do that to serve load. But they're lowering hurdles. They're making it easier. They're not making it a slam dunk, but they are, making things a little bit more reasonable with an eye to having more investment in transmission. So that's the direction that the PUC and ERCOT are heading. I see a question behind you before we start to run out of time.
real quick. Agreed with. Also, all of these alternatives. Let's see if it's a do nothing alternative.
Right. So the question is, there's a lot going on. There may not be consensus. So what's going to happen? What could happen? If there's not consensus, I'm not sure that there will be a do nothing option. I'm pretty confident that the legislature will tell us what to do. If we don't take their direction in hearings and in meetings and bills that are going to come through, if we don't take their direction, they'll legislate something to us. And us, I mean my ERCOT and PUC, which we will have to be a part of. But right, and that is a great question. How much do we want to give up, or how much do we want to pay for extra reliability? And we've been doing a lot of things. ERCOT has been doing a lot of things out of market to increase reliability, and we're actively trying to get those things put into the market so we can figure out a way to create some increased optimization, maybe make it a little bit less costly. But that's going to be a long time coming. So the question is, when does the PUC make a decision on the future model? That's to be determined. If we look back at this slide, it says PUC, they're expected to leave three things, so that we don't really know what they're going to do yet. We had direction that we had expectations they were going to do something this month, but the legislative session started this week, and so we're hearing folks at the legislative level saying, don't make a decision, we need to give you input. So it'll probably be sometime this session we'll get a clearer indication, and very likely if the legislature can convince the commission on what to do, to get those stakeholders to agree, we might see a bill, we might see direction that turns into the PUC doing something. But right now it's way too early to tell because we haven't really gotten to that point yet. But that's kind of what those are the signs I'm reading down the road that we're coming up on. So I think we're out of time, and I appreciate, you guys let me talk to you. This is something that I really enjoy talking about. It can get very complicated, so I appreciate the questions. They're very good, and follow-ups as needed. I'm happy to do it.
All right, so as you can see, that is an ever-evolving topic, and if you all are interested, in a follow-up briefing later on in the year, please let us know. Happy to arrange that. So now we are going to move on to our next topic, our legislative session update. And I want to mention that we have a new team member who's here with us today. But first, I'll start with, we have Carrie Meyer, our Director of Federal State Relations. And then we have Mr. Christian Kruger. You all may not have met Christian yet. I'm not sure. He's been with us a little bit over a year, September of 2021, Manager of Federal and State Relations. And then in the back of the room, we have Mr. Ken Whalen. He just joined us, I think, in December, wasn't it, Ken? And he is our Public Policy Communications Manager. So without further ado, Carrie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone, for having us here today. And I'll note that also on the WebEx, we have Marie Stoner. I think many of y'all have met Marie over the years. So the four of us are the team that is up in Austin. We are the leaders for the utility in our engagement with state legislature, Congress, a number of alphabet soup regulatory entities outside of the Public Utility Commission that David talked about. We also do a little bit of coordination on the PUC as well, but we're there working with our elected officials at both the state and the federal levels. So today's presentation is going to focus on the state legislature, which just started yesterday, but we'll focus on, with the amount of time that we have, some of the high points of where we see us spending most of our time, but please know there's a whole list of other things that we engage in, and we're happy to talk about, happy to have a follow-up meeting on. So here's what we'll do. We'll just quickly have a little election recap. We're going to talk a little bit about the statewide priorities so that we understand what's the environment we're walking into as we're looking at all of these different energy-related proposals and other things that impact CPS Energy. We're walking into a bigger ecosystem of legislative priorities and discussion. So setting that stage, Christian will talk about some of the anticipated industry issues, and then we'll get into some of our high-level priorities, and then we'll round it out with talking about how we engage and make sure that we're working with and coordinating with not only internal to CPS Energy, but also external to our community and industry. Quick election recap. Not a lot of change when it comes to the state legislature. All of the Republican statewide electeds who ran for re-election won their races. The Republicans will stay in control of the House and Senate. There were slight tweaks, maybe a couple of seat losses here and there, but still majority Republican in both chambers. And then, of course, yesterday, Representative Dave Thielen was reelected Speaker by a vote of 143-3. So he will continue to serve. And actually, I think right now they're debating their House rules, which I hear is getting a little spicy right now. So they're starting off fun. But like every session, it presents some great opportunities for us and some risks for us. And our team is there to make sure that we're engaging in those. Real quick, our Senate delegation, those are all incumbents that are returning. And then in the House, we have two new members, Representative DeRazio is replacing Representative Larson, and then Representative Garcia replaces Representative Mijares. Larson and Mijares both chose not to run for re-election. Besides these two, I'll say just in general about our delegation, we are very fortunate to have a supportive delegation. We had a briefing with them in December. We saw them all yesterday. We're going to be continually meeting with them throughout session, but we are very lucky to have a supportive delegation for CPS Energy, really knowledgeable staff and members up there with us in Austin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. Ahead of now the session has gotten going, started yesterday, we have tried to project based on some of the leadership's public comments what the primary issues will be for this 140 days. The top line, you probably read about it, is that the state has a large budget surplus of recently announced, I think on Monday, of $32.7 billion. So how that money will be spent is sure to be one of the most contentious and talked about items. The different leaders, being the Speaker, Lieutenant Governor, and Governor, have some differing priorities for that money. The Governor has said that he feels it should be directed toward a property tax rebate. It's possible Lieutenant Governor and Speaker will agree, but they haven't been as clear and indicated that's the number one priority. School and public safety, after the tragedy in Uvalde, there's going to be some effort at hardening school infrastructure, providing more security, mental health resources. So we'll watch that. That aligns with the next bullet. Border security, the Governor continues his Operation Lone Star, and they'll probably look to continue that and add some more funding there. And property taxes, as I said, there's a lot of agreement that something needs to be done on property taxes, but whether the surplus should be directed towards that remains to be seen. Now, more specifically for energy, out of last session, there were a whole host of agencies and other entities created, new bills passed, a lot of regulatory proceedings at the PUC and the Railroad Commission. Those came out of primarily SB3. That was the sweeping landmark piece of electricity industry legislation that passed in the last session. So in these intervening 2 years since they passed it, the PUC, Railroad Commission have been taking steps to comply with it. In the interim, both of the committees in the House and the Senate that oversee the electric industry assessed how that had been going, whether the PUC and the Railroad Commission had done adequately, how the market was responding. And both just this last couple of weeks, both the Senate and House committees of jurisdiction released their reports. For the Senate Business and Commerce Committee, we had suggested to one of our state senators that an issue of importance would be supply chain, because we are having, as are a lot of utilities throughout the country, a transformer shortage. One of their conclusions is that in this report that the state should find some way to encourage onshoring and incentivizing manufacturing here in the state, not necessarily just for electricity, but also with that in mind. The PUC and ERCOT Sunset Commission reports. There's a entity called the Sunset Commission that reviews all of the state agencies periodically, essentially to determine whether they should exist, and if they do exist, are they operating efficiently. So all of the agencies that are related to electricity were under review this cycle. The PUC, ERCOT, Office of Public Utility Council, TCEQ, et cetera. So there's a lot to wade through there. I believe the Sunset Commission is meeting as we speak. But the initial Sunset report indicated that the PUC should continue to exist, that it's worth having around. They felt the same about ERCOT, though that they cannot technically sunset ERCOT. But a couple of the recommendations they had for the PUC is that it needs more funding, that especially since Uri, they've taken on a lot more responsibility and they haven't similarly taken on more staff. So that and the PUC has said that themselves, that they feel like they need more resources and more people to manage all that they're doing. Along with that, the report recommends some kind of changes to address their water and wastewater oversight that the commissioners sometimes will mention in hearings, that they feel like they're a little bit stretched between all of these issues that they need to cover. And they still recommended the PUC improve its public communication with people. That's an ongoing issue, but they have established a kind of public, I don't know what they called it, but recently external relations or public engagement, Office of Public Engagement. So they're working on that, but that's some of what the Sunset Commission recommended. Their agency report to the legislature, I guess it's every cycle the PUC has to send a report to the legislature on their operations, and they also had some similar recommendations in there. And another one that I remember is they asked that a security clearance requirement be implemented for PUC staff to ensure that the grid remains secure, and given the sensitive nature of the operations, and especially if we've seen more attacks both physically and in the cyber space. As David thoroughly explained, there's a lot going on with market design. Just yesterday, the governor indicated that he supports the PCM, which is the performance credit mechanism that David mentioned. The PUC is expected to take some sort of vote on that tomorrow, maybe not to implement it finally, but to at least indicate some sort of support for that. I think part of the reason they're not acting more definitively is because many in the legislature oppose the PCM. The Senate Committee of Jurisdiction has, I think, unanimously come out against the PCM, or at least deciding on that yet before the legislature can weigh in. We saw the same in the House State Affairs Committee, that members said, why would you act on the second day of the legislative session when the people's representatives will have a chance to weigh in. So that's the legislature is pouring a little bit of cold water on that, so the PUC might slow down a bit. And lastly, the role of renewable generation, as David said, there's a transition going on in ERCOT and different perspectives within the state legislature and state leadership about whether that's good or bad or how to manage it. The lieutenant governor has said that his first and foremost priority for this session is ensuring there is more natural gas power plant development. He has specifically said natural gas. So assessing that, seeing how that, whether there's demand side programs, like one of our senators from Bexar County, Senator Menendez, is a staunch advocate of demand response and energy efficiency programs. So we'll likely see some legislation coming out of that too. Those are just a sampling of some of the things we'll be watching that more directly affect us outside of the general state priorities.
And what's interesting about a lot of these things, or many of these things, is that, like Christian said, House State Affairs, Senate Business and Commerce Committee reports came out within the last few days. The Sunset Commission is adopting their final report today. The PUC is voting on their agency report and possibly taking action on market design proposals tomorrow. These are things, you know, in prior sessions, we've known at least a month or two leading into a session where we thought the big priorities and the big topics were going to be. So this session, like every session being unique, this one's very unique in that a lot of what's going to frame the discussion is still in the works right now. So we're still waiting on these reports, or these reports are still being considered before we then take the next step into figuring out what does the legislature want to do? Do they want to turn these into proposals? Do they want to file a bill and pass a bill? So it's a lot that's still up in the air, like David was saying. In our world, too, there's a lot that's squishy right now. To what Christian was saying about the PUC and the governor and lieutenant, the legislature, is there is part of the fundamental disagreement that they're having or difference of course on market design proposals is, in some ways, the PUC thinks that what the legislature did in SB3 gave them the authority they needed to do some of these things. And they started doing some things and considering these things. And now the legislature is saying, wait, you need to come to us and discuss these things with us before you take further action. So there's a little bit sometimes of a squishy, what do they think they have the ability to already do versus what is the legislature saying, no, you don't. We need to sit down and have a more thorough conversation on this. So, yes, sir.
So it seems to be there's three parties that engage, right? PUC and ERCOT, and then the power community, CPS being one member of that community, that the legislators kind of speak to those three parties. Is that roughly right?
Yes. The question was whether or not there were roughly three parties, a PUC and ERCOT, the power industry, and then legislators, and that's correct. So there's a continual cycle we see of using, I guess, SB3 as an example. The legislature set their priority and their vision and said, this is what we want to happen, one of those being a reliability standard. This is what we want to happen. Then it goes to the Public Utility Commission to say, okay, how are we going to make that happen? What are the rules that we need to make it happen? And then that's going to go to ERCOT to say, okay, what protocols and other things do we need to technically make those things work? And then as a result of that process, we're seeing now it come back to the legislature of here's still more that needs to be done, or here's something that needs to be done as a result. And all along that process, the utility industry is engaging, whether it's at the legislature, filing comments, or excuse me, not filing comments, filing testimony, testifying, or if it's at a PUC rulemaking, filing comments, or involved in the ERCOT stakeholder protocol process. So,
legislatures that you showed that CPS services.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Do you have their ear, or is their ear leading?
We have, so we're starting conversations. The question was if we have the ear and support of our Bexar County delegation. I would say overall, in general, we have a very supportive delegation of wanting to know and engage with us, excuse me, regarding what's happening in your world, where can we be supportive? Hey, Rudy, what can we do to work with you all? So in general, we've started having the market design discussions with them to make them aware of what's happening. And I'd say so far those discussions have been going well. But as of right now, there's not a specific path forward or legislative proposal relative to market design that we need to go to our delegation and say, hey, we need your support on this, or hey, we need your help on this. The question was about having a fourth party. I guess it depends on how you would consider, who you consider a fourth party. I mean, there's all sorts of stakeholders that are relevant in the process that maybe not necessarily utility industry. So there's a lot. I would say there's a lot of different interests from different stakeholder groups that don't necessarily neatly fit into utility or the legislature or a regulatory body. It is very complicated, but that's what makes it fun. So anyway, that's a lot of the fun dynamics that we're walking into. Yes, sir. That's correct. Yes. Yes, the statement was that the utility industry is not also homogenous, and that's correct. To some of the things David was talking about, depending on where you are or what type of entity you are, you have different interests and priorities. So absolutely. So now that we have all of that fun information, again, these are just some of our high items, or where we see spending most of our time. There are going to be a number of other smaller topics that we will be engaging in. But first and foremost, oh, I went too far. There we go. First and foremost, our number one priority is protection of the MOU business model. Every session we see proposals that, although not directed at CPS Energy, could negatively impact our model, our ability to make the decisions we make here locally, impacts the relationship we have with our city owner and our community. So we're always on the lookout for proposals that could impact that in a negative way and engage in those. The next two bullets are tied together and correspond a lot to what David was speaking about, but also more generally, as we expect to see legislative proposals that the author or supporters believe will improve the reliability or resiliency of the electric system, or say the natural gas system or supplies. We want to support those proposals that we assess and determine will have a positive impact towards reliability and resiliency, but in a manner that appropriately balances those costs with the benefits with the cost to our end use customer. Because like David was saying, since we have generation, we also have customers. We want to make sure that anything that's talked about in this realm, that we can look at it and balance it. Okay, what's the intended benefit? What's going to be the cost to our customers and our utility at the end of the day? It's sort of tied to then customer affordability, state and federal funding opportunities. Like Christian said, there is a $32.7 billion surplus, and we know that everybody is going to be looking at where can that money go: education, property tax reform, healthcare. We know it'll be a hard road, but we want to find every opportunity we can to direct some funding to utility customers who are in need. Whether it's federal funding that's come down or state funding, we'll be looking at those opportunities. And then lastly, my favorite topic, and this is a defensive one that we hope really there won't be much action on, but as Christian stated, the TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, is also going under sunset, and as is the Texas Low-Level Radioactive Waste Disposal Compact Commission. It's a short name, but you know, CPS, as part owner of STP, we do generate nuclear waste. There is a low-level disposal site out in Andrews County, Texas, and we're part of the compact that created it. So the TCEQ has jurisdiction over the health and safety aspects of operating that site, and then the low-level commission has jurisdiction over all the other aspects of it. So although the sunset bills for TCEQ and the compact commission don't have anything substantive or controversial relative to the site or low-level nuclear waste, if you put a bill out there that has to do with nuclear waste, as we've seen in recent sessions, especially with the separate issue of high-level waste, that could raise that conversation and you might see a debate. And so this is going to be one where we are just going to be looking out to preserve and protect our low-level site and our ability as a compact generator. And again, as we mentioned, since some of these reports are still being finalized, these are going to continue to evolve. There will be other areas where we engage on other topics. This is going to be continually moving. And like Yvonne mentioned at the beginning, we hope to have a day where you all come up and we'll have new things to talk about and new things to work through. Come on. Oh, I accidentally took us back, I think. There we go. That you're, yep.
So as the session proceeds, we have a robust structure internally to get with our subject matter experts, review the legislation, and discuss its potential impacts to CPS Energy. We had a legislative analyst training last month for these people. We've just started assigning bills to these subject matter experts, because even though the legislature only officially began yesterday, the members were able to pre-file bills going back to November. So we've seen, as of yesterday when I checked, 1,699 bills filed. It will likely, triple, maybe quadruple in the course of the session. So, yeah. So there's a lot to review, but like I said, we remain connected to these people internally. We'll provide real-time updates to our board. Carrie and Kathy will be presenting later this month, and we do so with leadership like Rudy, who we're fortunate to have in the room today. And in addition to hopefully bringing CAC up in March, we will have other executives and members of the utility come up to Austin so that they can see what we do and see some of the hearings and issues that affect more specifically their departments. So.
And then just to close it out real quick, we also work externally. We want to make sure that we are in alignment on shared priorities, not only with our community partners, our city owner and regulator, but also industry partners. And so this is just a sampling of some of the groups that we work with. This is not all encompassing. On the protection of the MOU business model, we're fortunate that the Chambers of Commerce and the City of San Antonio have that in their legislative agendas as well. We're fortunate to have their support on that, but we're making sure not only are we working internally across the utility, but we're also working externally across the community and our industry partners. So that's an ongoing thing throughout session. And so with that, that takes us to the end of our presentation, and we are happy to take questions if we have time. I don't know if we do, but 3 minutes. Oh. Sorry, yes, the question was to explain MOU. Sorry, we get in our acronym world, MOU is a municipally owned utility, not a memorandum of understanding. But yeah, our municipally owned utility, there are certain sections, there are certain portions of state law that set up the way we're structured. And so when they're in session, there's always a chance that someone may try to affect or change those statutes, and that's what we look out for on behalf of CPS. Yes, Mayor Dennis.
I just want to reiterate that I'm glad you're saying that partners not Texas Municipal League, which represents 13 cities here. We are here to support.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That was Mayor Dennis expressing her support for from the Texas Municipal League for those on the WebEx. Thank you. Yes, again, those are just some of the specific ones where we get into specific agenda conversations, but across the board, there's many more. Yes, sir.
A lot of times everybody I've asked that solve it. People like it should be archived. Anybody at legislature, the topic is
For those on the WebEx, the question was about transmission and who has jurisdiction, whether we'll see any state proposals. Transmission storage, yes. So there is, I believe there was a bill filed yesterday. There is a member out of the West Texas area, Representative Drew Darby, who's very interested and been very engaged on transmission issues. And he passed a bill last session that had to do with the criteria, right, David, that's used for assessing and approving transmission projects at the PUC. And I believe the bill that he filed yesterday is a follow-up to that, but we'll need to take a look at that. We'd be happy to follow up. So there are conversations and there are bills that we see every session that have to do with incentivizing or making the process for building transmission more expedited. We also see, as Christian spoke about, proposals about the role of renewables or different technologies. I guess you could, in addition to renewable generation, new technologies like battery storage and then energy efficiency. We see proposals on one end that want to help those proliferate and become more common in the state to help the grid. And then we see proposals on the other side from those that are concerned about how abundant those things are becoming and if they're actually negatively impacting the reliability of the grid. So we do see them on both sides. I don't know that I've seen, and that's not specific, I guess I should clarify, that's not specific to batteries. That's more generally about renewables. I've not seen any proposals yet on battery storage. I don't believe any have been out there, but we're happy to keep you updated on that. So, but we do see the transmission conversation every session. All right. Anything else? David, anything that you wanted to add to? All right. Cool. Well, hopefully we'll see y'all in March.
All right, Chair Kelly, before we move into the roundtable section, I'd like to introduce Rudy Garza. Of course, you all have all met Rudy Garza, our President and Chief Executive Officer, but he'd like to say a few words to the committee. Rudy, we're using this as a microphone.
That's interesting. Well, it's backwards. Well, welcome to everybody online, and it's good to see y'all here in the room today. Mr. Kelly, congratulations. I understand today's your first day as chair. You know, I don't know if you stood still and everybody else stepped back. You know how it goes sometimes when you volunteer, but congrats, and we really appreciate your leadership. And, you know, again, it's really important what this group does. Bill, thank you for your chairmanship. I think you've done a great job, tackled some challenging issues, but I think we got to a good place, and I appreciate your willingness to engage in that conversation. It's really good to see y'all. I know it's been a couple of months since I've been able to make it. We have got just so much going on right now. You know, I thought last year was a challenging year, but I thought a year of kind of recovery in my mind. I mean, we still got a long way to go to get, you know, where I think the community expects us to be, but we're doing the things that we have to do to make progress. And, you know, that's all I think anybody can ask of my leadership team. You know, the expectations are high around here, and we embrace that responsibility. But I'll tell you, this year is going to be kind of a year of last year was kind of a year of recovery. One of the things, I don't know if they talked about with you or not, but the Business Journal recently named CPS Energy, you know, one of the businesses that they're recognizing as a business of the year for last year. I thought, you know, a year ago that would have been unheard of to think that we would be in that position, you know, a short year later. But I honestly believe it's because of the work that people see us trying to do to be more accountable, to be more transparent, to engage the community in the way that maybe we haven't done such a good job of in the past. You know, I think in the past, you know, we said, oh, we've got a CAC for that, right? And come here and told you everything that, you know, that we knew. And I think the expectation is we got to work harder, you know, to get out into the community and to have, you know, conversations, not just one way, but two way, right? And we got to listen probably first, you know, and then try to do something with the feedback that we're getting. And even with some council members who may not always agree with me or us or kind of our strategies around here. I am getting a lot of feedback that they see us trying harder. And I think that speaks to the progress, I think we've made over the last year. This year, we got a lot ahead of us. I know y'all probably spent some time. We'll be at council tomorrow to talk about our generation plan recommendations and what the RAC did. The board will vote on that on the 23rd, and then we'll see what happens there. And then the work begins on trying to execute. Put plans in place to make all those things happen. We've got a rate structure issue to kind of take up. I think that'll be probably maybe less complicated than the generation planning process was. But that'll involve the CAC to a certain degree as well, because, we said 2 years ago that we'd be back this year to have another rate conversation, and we will. It's necessary. We can't accomplish the things that the community's telling us are important to them without reconciling where we are financially and asking the community to support us with whatever it is that ultimately we determine that we're going to need. But I think we're on a good pathway to have that conversation this year. We've done the work that has been expected of us. We're tackling the generation plan, making some decisions there. The third party kind of review that of our organization and some of the things that council got interested in last rate case, that'll be presented to the board in February. And once it's presented to the board, we'll be glad to bring those kind of observations here and then get your feedback on it as well. But, again, there's nothing in it for us to not be willing to engage in conversations about how we can get better, right? And I think this year in particular, I think that, there's going to be some stabilization that happens in advance of the next rate case conversation that's got to occur. We've had 3 years of compounded black swan events, right? That I think we've managed as best as can be expected, but the impact has been not insignificant, right? And one rate case doesn't fix the 8 years of no rate cases that you've gone without. What that means is, in the past, and I think the organization's done a good job of finding efficiencies and cutting costs and doing the things that we're expected to do. But in some of those years, it came at the expense of investment that we should have been making that we weren't making, right? The things that we're doing this year are not discretionary. Moving in the direction of a generation plan that the community buys into, that's not discretionary. Whatever that costs, it costs. Upgrading our computer systems that are 22 years old, not discretionary. We just saw what happens with Southwest Airlines when you don't invest in your systems. That can happen here. So that's not a discretionary investment that we have to make. So, what you're going to see out of me and my leadership team as we move forward is, look, we have got to invest in this organization to ensure longer term success. And, maybe that's a series of 2 or 3 smaller rate cases to get us there. And then once we make the investments, then we'll reconcile and maybe we can do a rate decrease at some point in time in the future once we've accomplished the things that we need to accomplish. But make no mistake about it, we have underinvested in this organization, and none of those investments these days are now discretionary, including, by the way, the $2 million a year I have to spend to weatherize my power plants in advance of the winter season. That used to be considered discretionary. And then Uri happened, and guess what? It's not discretionary anymore. Now I've got ERCOT sitting there, inspecting my power plants to ensure I've done the work that we said we're going to do, right? So these are all just elements of what I call our stabilization strategy to get us to the right place that'll set us up for long-term success. So we'll see. There are folks who want to think about CPS Energy in terms of what we have been in the past. And what you'll hear me say over and over and over again, I'll say it again today, is the CPS Energy we were is not the CPS Energy we are today, and it's not the CPS Energy we need to be in the future. And my job is to get us from where we are today to that place, right? If I can't build these huge baseload power plants, then I got to encourage as much distributed generation and figure out how I'm going to use those resources to manage our peak, right? It's a whole different strategy from where we've been in the past. But again, all the uncertainty in the market right now, I don't want to find us in the position of having to rethink a Spruce 2 again. I'm not going to do it. Not under my watch. It's not going to happen. None of my leaders were here when the decision to build that second Spruce unit happened, but we did. And now the community is telling us they want something else, and we got to figure that out, right? So I'm trying very, very hard in my desire to build a more transparent organization. You're going to hear a lot of real talk from me, and it's not always going to be, roses and, rainbows and unicorns. I'm going to tell you what I think, we got to do to get there, and the community is either going to, support us or they're not. And if they don't, then we'll figure out what that means. But my job is to put plans in place, reasonable, that are measured, that keep us affordable, that keep us reliable, but that also move us into the future. Does that sound reasonable, to you? So I'm going to stop there. I know we're at the tail end of y'all's time, but anybody got any questions of me? Tom.
So you're going somewhere in the future.
Yes, sir.
And you're going to lay out some plans, and it could be a different company to start. So I'd ask you to think through. Don't answer now if you don't have it. What do we need to do, CAC, to be there?
Right.
Right? Because I assume that's going to transform, and so it would be good for us to begin that thinking, the dialogue about how to transform ourselves,
right,
to serve both the ratepayers as well as you.
Right. Well, number one is you got to kind of dig into that Vision 2027 strategy and tell us what's missing or what doesn't sound right. I know we've presented it to you at a high level. I think you probably ought to spend one of your meetings digging into that and telling us what you think is good and what you think maybe lacking. Because that Vision 2027 document is going to kind of dictate what we focus on. Here's one of the problems that we've had in the past. We've been all things to all people when we really only have two charges. We got to be the most reliable electric utility and gas utility for our customers in San Antonio. I don't really care. I mean, we got to get benchmark against the industry, as the standard, right? The metrics have to measure up. But what I want to figure out is, how do you all determine what success looks like for CPS Energy? That's what I care about. And if I'm measuring things that you don't care about, then let's focus on what you do care about and measure those things, right? Because my goal is, in your eyes, am I doing a good job or not? That's my focus. That's my only focus, quite frankly. And the other element of that is, when you hear me talk about one team, Tom, everybody has a role to play in that. Our customers help us determine whether or not we're successful or not. City Council have a huge role to play. They're part of the team, whether they agree with it or not. They're part of the team. The minute they agree to become a City Council member, they're owners of a utility company. What are you going to do? Right? It's not discretionary whether or not they want to be owners. They are owners. And so they're going to determine how successful our business is going to be going forward. So when council passes a CAP ordinance, which we're now accountable to comply with, that's a community decision. My job's not to question whether or not CAP is right or wrong. It's done, right? My job is to figure out how I'm going to make it happen, at least from our perspective. And I think the more the CAC can think like that and kind of not so much about where we are, but it's almost like, you want to, when you're playing football, you want to anticipate where the ball's going, not where the ball is, right? Well, what the CAC needs to do is anticipate where you see us going and figure out, how you can do your part to help us get there. And most of it is having real conversations with the community about what's going on over here. I think that one of the things I guess I'm most proud of is, I don't know if you noticed or not, the noise has stopped. Why has the noise stopped? Because we're telling people we're not keep holding things back anymore. We're putting it out there, good or bad. And you can make your own determinations about how you feel about that. But the media isn't playing gotcha anymore because there's really nothing to get to gotcha on, right? Because it's all out there, you know? And you know what? I mean, yeah, maybe some days that creates challenges for us, but I'd rather deal with it and move on than it to sit there and fester. You know, that's energy wasted that I just don't want any part of, right? So that's a great question. Yes, sir.
Could I use the speaker?
Sure.
Probably the introduction here, trying to deal with it.
But I just want to make a couple of comments real quickly. I think that, as you mentioned, I think that you personally and your staff have done a great job in the last year or plus of trying to position CPS in a better light with the community. I think y'all have really gone the extra mile to do that. We'd like to continue to support you on that and do what we can to help with that. But I think as you get into the touchy issue of a rate increase, I think, you know, if you'd tried to do that a year and a half ago, I don't think that would have gone well. But I think you've kind of laid the groundwork now to be successful in moving forward with that. It's tough. It's going to be a difficult conversation. Everybody's not going to support it because we are in an inflationary environment right now, unfortunately. So it's probably not hitting the public at the right time, but we've got to do what we've got to do. And I think our part is to try to help you get that message out to the community. And if I might say so, if you'll allow us to speak truth to power, if we can hear things in the community and relay those back to you. I read you as somebody that's willing to listen to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm just copy. I got 2 years for a reason.
So anyway, I would just say my comment is I think you've done a great job and we support you doing that going forward.
Appreciate it. And I agree. I mean, even in a difficulty of a rate conversation, you know, I think, you know, my commitment always is, you know, we're not going to ask for anything more than we need. It's going to be known. You know, it's not going to be estimates. It's going to cost us this amount of money to upgrade our system because we've put the RFP out. We know over what time period it's going to take us to get it done. And maybe we get 2 years of what we need this year. And then in 2 years, we sharpen our pencil and come back for whatever else we might need. Right. So rather than ask for it all at one time, like we tried to do last year and it didn't work out, we focused on what we knew at that time. Now we're back like we said we would be, and we're going to focus on what we know today. And then a couple of years from now, we'll come back and we'll focus on what we know at that point in time. And I think when you've actually done the work to get hard numbers, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to sell to the community to say, look, we did the work you asked us to do. We know this is the cost, right? You know, and that's not how we've always done things, right? Oh, we need $1 billion to build a new power plant, and you know, cost $800 million, and you know, but we don't necessarily reconcile that within rates. Well, going forward, I mean, I would love to get to the other side of the transition that we're in and come back and say, you know what, I think this year we can do a 5% rate decrease. That is unheard of in the utility industry. But in my mind, that there's a future state that I am hopeful will allow for that. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all for what you do, and I'll be back next time, probably in a couple of months again. Okay? All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are at the end of our time, Chair Kelly, but are there any closing comments that you'd like to make for the committee? Thank you, Rudy.
Okay, I'll just try to be real quick here. I think that, as I said, I'm a collaborative kind of guy, and I really would like to encourage y'all to feed up any ideas, suggestions you have for topics for discussion. Obviously, Rudy gave us a good one there, that we need to look at the 2027 statement. So I think that might be something we could look at. But I think we need to respond to what y'all see as things of interest, things that you may hear from people that you interact with out in the public. And so, you know, they may have questions. Why is CPS doing this or that? Let's kind of collate all those issues and come up with good suggestions. The staff is always very willing to address any questions or ideas that we have. So If y'all would do that, you'll help me out, think about ideas. I'd greatly appreciate that. And sorry, we just kind of ran out of time today. The other thing is, as Yvonne has said, we need to think about the trip in March. I do think that would be exciting. It's always interesting to go see the legislature in action, see them making sausage. So that's what we need to do. All right. Thank you, Yvonne. I guess at this point, do we want to close the meeting then? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you.